I'm Margaret Ryan with Clean Skies News in Copenhagen. I'm here with Ned Helme. He's the president of the Center for Clean Air Policy, and he's a consultant to some of the groups that are negotiating here. Ned, welcome to Clean Skies.
Thanks so much, Margaret. Pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about what you are doing here.
Well, we work a lot, Margaret, with the individual delegates, and we pull them together periodically for private, off-the-record discussions. And our goal is really to see where everybody's second choice is and see if we can help bring them together.
Are you working mainly with the LCA, the Long Term Cooperative Action Group, or the Kyoto Protocol Group?
LCA is where the action is, so we focus principally on that. And as I mentioned to you, there's a new text today, very promising, that came out of the LCA group.
It's promising in what way?
It looks like a real balancing job between the interests of developing countries and the developed nations. It really crafts a path, I think, that may take us to a finish line.
Well, we have seen divisions here this week, not only between the developed and developing world, but among the developing world, from the big emerging economies and the small island states. What do you see as the gaps to be bridged there?
Well, I think a lot of that is the opening salvos, and so we often see people go to their corners and then they come back into the ring, and I think this text today signals coming back together into the ring. So I see it as it's useful. The action by the island countries basically is to say they're the only ones who can say to both developed and big developing countries, you aren't doing enough and we're going to disappear. And that needed to be said, and now I think we're at a point where we start to talk seriously about, all right, what's the solution?
Because in July, the Major Economies Forum and meeting at L'Aquila, Italy, settled on the 2-degree limit. The island states are saying, if you let the temperature increase go to 2 degrees, we are goners, we're not there. How do you find a compromise on that?
Well, I think you have to think about this as a long-term game. We're playing to 2050. And so this is like having a huge oil tanker, and we're trying to turn that tanker around. And it's not going to go very fast at first, but once we get the tanker pointed in the right direction, it's going to pick up speed. And so I think, yes, there'll be demands for more this week, but the key is, do these 110 presidents agree on the direction the tanker's moving? And then I think we put the speed on. We've seen that in other treaties. Once you've got it moving, then you can really roll.
You have said that Copenhagen is not Kyoto. What's your point there?
Real simple. Kyoto was simply developing countries were on the sideline. They basically could make reductions through projects and get paid for it, but they weren't asked to make any real efforts on their own. The world's changed in 12 years. Developing countries are actually doing more than people like the United States and Europe, more actual reductions. And we're at a point where we're looking for that joint effort, that cooperative effort, where developing countries take action that's monitorable, reportable, and verifiable in return for financing. And this question of financing will be the big agenda item next week when the presidents are here.
When we heard Todd Stern a couple of days ago say, yeah, we are looking at financing for the poorest countries that are really in the path of climate change, but big emerging economies like China, who of course are among the developing countries in the Kyoto Protocol, they're at the back of the line. He did not see them in line for aid. Is that going to be a problem here?
I think it is. I think there'll have to be something done for those big countries. And I think it's more in the form of loans and new technology, assistance to overcome problems where banks don't make loans for energy efficiency in China, that kind of thing. So I don't think it's truckloads of money. It's really targeted assistance. And I think maybe the US money goes to least developed and middle countries, and maybe Europe's money, someone else's money, helps the Chinese. So I think there's a package here so the US doesn't have to send money to China and we still can have a deal.
Right. Well, the U.S. role here, the U.S. has been essentially on the sidelines, or even, according to some people here, taken a negative role for some years now. And this is a huge turnaround for the U.S. How do you see can the U.S. bring people together? Has it gained enough credibility at this point?
I think it's gaining credibility. Not quite there, but I think like last week, the president decided to come on the 18th rather than 9th, big deal. The fact that he said, we will pay our fair share of this early $10 billion package we're putting together, 10 billion euro package. Very significant. That's a shift. The Senate has said $1.3 billion. In effect, what the president's saying is we need to go a little better, and that is picked up by the delegates here. They understand that.
Okay. Ned Helme, president of the Center for Clean Air Policy, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Margaret.
I'm Margaret Ryan for Clean Skies News in Copenhagen, Denmark.